Thank you for listening to another episode of the Business of Fun podcast. I am your host, Dave Wakeman. My guest today is Victor Varnado. Before I talk to you about my conversation with Victor, let me remind you to check out my website. It is at davewakeman.com. You can also find the Talking Tickets newsletter at talkingtickets.substack.com. And there is a Talking Tickets Slack channel. I'm going to put the link in the show notes because that's way too long for me to tell you in this short span of time that we have here. So my conversation, I wanted to have a talk with Victor because he has a really interesting background. We wanted to talk about AI storytelling, digital spaces. Victor launched a really great project called the Tic Tac Toe Championship. We talked about digital accessibility and some stuff he's done with the National Science Foundation. We talked about creativity in his work. We talked about ADHD and how it impacts his creativity. We talked about Questlove. We talked on being some New York cartoonists. We talked about overcoming your fear, stand-up comedy. We talked about all kinds of stuff. This is a great conversation with Victor Varnado on the Business of Fun podcast. All right, I want to welcome Victor Varnado to the Business of Fun podcast. Victor, what's happening?
I'll tell you what's happening. I'm just having a good day so far. I had some coffee, had my New York bagel. My mom always makes fun of me because, like, when I'm walking to get a bagel, I'll always call her and she'll like, "Oh, you're so New York." And so that's what I did this morning. Had a New York bagel.
Now, are you in New York right now?
Yeah, that's where I live.
Okay, perfect. Okay, great. I was not 100% certain, so it is really a New York bagel because there's a and I asked because I'm in DC and there's a place that they try to call New York bagel. I'm like going, no, it has to be in New York to be a New York bagel. It's just how it is.
I get you. I'm more lenient on the names, but whatever.
Well, we you got to have like some pillars that you stick in the sand, or everything's meaningless. Now this. I've been excited to talk to you because you have a really interesting background. And one of the things I think a good starting point for is you have created this new idea. And I am certainly going to enter into this as more than anybody else of the Tic Tac Toe Championship.
The worldwide Tic Tac Toe.
Yeah,
yes.
The worldwide Tic Tac Toe Championship. I can finally have a chance of winning something. This is amazing.
Yeah, exactly. You probably can't. I don't know. You remember when Wordle was really popular?
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
So when Wordle was really popular, I was like, I wish that I could play against everyone else in the world and be ranked. Wouldn't that have been cool? And so I wanted to build something where you could do that. So anyone in the world can play. It's a game. It is a game based on tic-tac-toe. It's a video game you can play on your phone, and it'll rank you versus everyone else in the world. You don't have to download anything either. It's just a website you can go to, just like Wordle. You could play a game and it'll rank you versus everyone else in the world. Starts February 18th.
That's just amazing. Because I think that as far as games go, people are like, oh yeah, tic-tac-toe is so easy. I can do it. And then there's, so many permutations, and I've lost to so many kids.
Oh yeah. There's like all kinds of ways to tic-tac-toe. I'm designing the game, so I've been studying tic-tac-toe for months right now. And so it started off as a game called Knots and Crosses. I don't know if you knew this. And so it used to be a physical game where they'd have a tic-tac-toe style board, and then every person one person either had a knot or two sticks that they would cross, and they would put those on the board. But you could only put down 3, and after your third time putting something down, you just have to move your pieces rather than you could fill up the whole board. So that's where it started, where it was like you put down 3 and then you would have to move them around, and you try to get 3 in a row by tricking your opponent. But then later on it became the more traditional tic-tac-toe, which will come up in the game too. But just interesting stuff, right?
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of the tailgating where you have the game that's like kind of the big manual tic-tac-toe board. So it kind of harkens back to the knots and crosses idea, which is where like you said, you just taught me the game started because I was like, oh man, that's like very similar to that game that you see people play when they're at tailgating at football games,
Mm.
which is great. Now, one thing I'm curious about, there was a couple things because over the years I've had a chance to talk to people about the idea of accessibility in digital spaces, and I like to come back to the idea every so often because I think it's important because how do I want to put it? I think that being thoughtful in the way that you approach your design decisions, even if you're thinking about accessibility, is helpful no matter what audience you're focusing on. And
Hmm.
at the same time, I think it's also it's something that it had a huge moment, and I don't want people to forget about like making their spaces accessible because I feel like we're at a point in time where um, making the arts and entertainment feel open to everybody is much more important. So I want to delve into that a little bit, and I guess I'll start with, kind of what's guiding you in this work, and like where did how have you developed? What are some of the ideas that guide the work, and then like how did you come about these ideas?
Well, I mean, I think you're talking about my work with accessibility technology. Are you
Yeah.
talking about so just to clarify for everybody out there, I had a grant from the National Science Foundation for an interface that I created that helps people with disabilities play, among other things, video games, but also you can also use it for software. And I developed it originally because I had a friend who was paralyzed from the neck down, and then he would have people come over and play video games so he could watch. And then I was like, I want to make a game that he can play easily. Now there's assistive technology for people to play games, but a lot of it is expensive, or you have to buy extra material. And I wanted something that where he could just use it right out of the box. So I tried to make a video game that he could play, and I did make a video game that he could play. But then the interface for that game turned out to be something that was useful for people with disabilities, not just people who are paralyzed, but also it works for people who are blind, and it helps people who are deaf in some ways. And so then that ended up being the interface for this game that I made ended up being something that was useful for accessibility. So like that's how it happened, kind of by accident. Like I
Yeah.
wasn't trying to make accessibility technology. I was trying to make a game for my friend. And so, but that, you know, that I would say that it has not been my pursuit to make everything more accessible, but I want things to be accessible because I myself am legally blind. So it helps that things are accessible so that I can use them too.
Yeah, well, and I think a lot of the really great ideas they do come about by accident, or
Yeah.
like trying to solve a problem that for somebody you care about and somebody that it's important. And even though forgive me because my question is clunky, which is kind of goes with the territory. In the waiver that I sent over, that that's what you signed up for. It's like clunky questions from Dave. It's the only
Hmm.
thing that was on that form. Um, and I'm joking about the form for anybody who's listening and going, Dave sends over a form? No, Dave doesn't send over anything. Um, but it's really interesting because, it's like these the evolution of ideas, right? And I think that sort of seems to be at the heart of a lot of the work that you do is like you've been able to evolve over time. When I was looking at your background, there's been a lot of things where you've had a chance to like you started out in one direction and you pivoted all over the place. Like you've been in comedy, you've been in movies, you've technology, AI storytelling for neurodivergent people, all of these really cool things. And so I want to come back and touch on, the idea of the storytelling and AI storytelling for neurodivergent audiences. But how do, where does this flexibility and this kind of creativity come from?
I think that I think that most creatives, well, at least me, I know for sure, but I'm gonna speak for all creatives, even though
Let's just make a
right now
blanket statement
I
for
made a
everybody.
blanket statement. I at the core, I feel like being creative is just like in my blood. So it doesn't matter what medium I'm working on, I will always be creative. And so so for me, it's like no difference. There's no difference in like working on a visual art piece or working on a writing piece or working on a stand-up comedy routine or working on a film. It all scratches the same itch inside me, if that doesn't sound too gross. And I think that I think that I just feel like I don't see a difference. Like I learn skills in a different medium, and then I add my creativity on top of that. So I just feel like they're all, pretty much the same. Although, if you want to talk specifically about, you know, AI for neurodivergent people, I did create a tool because myself, I'm ADHD, if you couldn't tell already. But one of the things that's hard for me is to concentrate and or focus on something unless it's like really all encompassing. And so when I write, sometimes it's just a grind because the parts of writing that are really like the apex of creativity that I really, really enjoy and it engages me 100%. Like when you have something that you've worked on and you're polishing it and you're making sure every word is correct and you're kind of like making sure the emotion hits right. Like at that point, I'm 100% engaged. But when I'm just like kind of like doing the just the grunt work of writing, it's hard for me to get through it. So I created a tool that helps me with the grunt work of writing. So it's called a writing coach, and what it does is I can sit down and I can say, I want to write a story about this. I can type, whatever I want to write about, and then it'll interview me and ask me questions about it. And by the time I'm done, I have a rough draft of my entire piece, like my entire book, and then I can go back and polish it. So the part of like figuring out like, what the structure is and having a plan to get from 0 to at least a rough draft, like I don't have to come up with that plan. The system helps you do that, but it's still my work, my ideas, and then my final piece.
So when you use this tool, because now this is like really interesting to me because I know a lot of people who have ADHD and, it expresses itself in any number of different ways. So when you are speaking into the tool, does it help? Does it actively kind of format things for you, or is it something where it just gives you the ability to go back and like see what you've talked about, and then you pick out the frame? Because a lot of the people I know, that organization is where they get jammed up the most. It's not so much like talking, or it
organizes it for you. This is how the tool works. You go into the tool, you say, I want to write a book about whatever, and then you'll say, like, this is the title, this is what I want the book to be about, and then it will interview you for a pre-interview. It'll like ask you like 5 to 7 questions and ask you your involvement with the material, like what your experience is, et cetera, and then it takes that away, and then it comes back with an entire interview for a whole book, chapter by chapter. So all you have to do is answer questions for each chapter, and then when you're done with each chapter, it'll take that information and then create a rough draft of that chapter based on what you just told it. And so by the time you're done, you have a rough draft of an entire book. You don't have to do any sort of the structure stuff yourself.
No, that's really cool because, I think that's the hardest part for anybody.
Yes, it is. Yes, you are correct. This is exactly why I made it. I wrote a whole book with it. Like once I finished it, like to test it out, I wrote a whole book with it just to make sure that it works, and it works great.
Yeah. Now, while we're hitting on this thing too, because you talked about like, you do the stand-up comedy, you're involved in technology, you're writing, all these different ideas. A person that I had on the podcast way back in the day was a friend of mine called Peter Shankman, and Peter has like been really good about writing about his ADHD and how he thinks of it as a superpower. And and that's the way I've always I've been fortunate because I've known Peter for a long time. That when I started meeting kids and people with ADHD as I moved along, I was like going, oh my God, this is like you have this secret weapon. That you can use. Is that how? I mean, it sounds like that's like similar to the way you view it. Is like when I've got all this, like all these the ideas, like instead of being something that I should be afraid of, it's something to really embrace, And do you think that like having this ability to like slice and dice your ideas all over the place helps with the creativity? That was a really awkward question of asking you about like how does the ADHD help you become more creative? Because I'm always curious about that because it's like I coach soccer with like a lot of kids who are now in high school.
Uh-huh.
And it's like, and I'm always trying to talk to about like going, yeah, if you have ADHD, who cares? It's a superpower. It allows you to process the world like in a different way than everybody else. You see patterns and movements and things that other people can't see. And I'm jealous.
Oh, well, great. Is there a question? What's your question?
I forgot the question. So the question the question was like, how does like do you feel that the ADHD helps you with your creativity because you are an incredibly creative person?
I don't know. I mean, I've never not had ADHD, so I don't know how it would be without it. Um, I I guess the easiest way to do that would be to compare me to somebody else who is creative who does not have ADHD. But I don't know the answer to your question. I don't have enough expertise.
Having only been the way I am, I don't know is like a completely a totally like normal answer. Now let me and I that was really like coming out of my experience with kids because I think it's sit down, listen, be like, just stuck in your chair or whatever the case might be. And I was just like going, no, I was like going, this creativity and this excitement that you have, because that's the way it shows up with a lot of the kids I work with is like, they're really excited about trying things or testing things. Maybe not the best at like listening to instructions all the time when I'm like droning on, but like it's great. And and I was just like, I'm always looking for ways to help kids like just embrace who they are and so like I don't know, that's probably a long-winded way of saying a whole lot of nothing, but let me ask you about also though your work with Supreme Robot, which I understand which is another thing that you built. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're up to at Supreme Robot?
Well, Supreme Robot is my company, and so it does media and tech. So we do like TV, film, software, books, etc., just all kinds of stuff. But they're all like usually my ideas. Supreme Robot is kind of like the incubator for my ideas, and then when an idea gets big enough, then it becomes its own company. Maybe it has its own investors, etc., etc. So like I have like a bunch of different projects that I have with Supreme Robot. We have like a software. We have a software arm which mostly is either video games or AI products that help create AI tools for creatives. And then we have, an arm where we make TV shows and films. And right now we're trying to do a second season of a series that we did previously called Realm of LARP, which is live action role players documenting them beating the crap out of each other.
That's great. I was not expecting that. That's awesome. So Super Robot TV film is an incubator, and so it captures all your ideas.
Robot, sorry.
Yeah, a Supreme Robot. If I said it wrong, you
said Super Robot.
Super Robot. It's also a great company name. The Supreme Robot. Sorry. A lot of the people that listen to this podcast they work in the title of the business of fun. They work in entertainment. They work in sports, all of these creative industries. I think one of the lessons that I like to convey to people is, how do you continue to create ideas, right? Because one of the beautiful things about what you've done here with Supreme Robot is that you are going in many different modes, right? And it's kind of been like a sort of a theme of like a conversation so far is all the different places where you can make magic happen. And one of the challenges that I get in the feedback from people when I'm out in the world talking to them, or if I do a survey or anything, is that they feel kind of confined to the conventional wisdom of the medium or the organization that they're working with. And one of the nice things I like to talk, or one of the things I like to talk to people about, especially when they don't have these backgrounds where they've been able to break away from some of these limiting beliefs, I think would be the
Mm-hmm.
best way of putting it, is like, how do you approach that? Because that's a struggle for a lot of people.
How do I approach limiting beliefs?
Yeah, yeah, or discarding them, I think is the better thing, because I mean that's sort of always been my thing. It's like I'm always looking for an excuse to like make people tell me to not do something.
Mm-hmm.
Has always been the way I approached it. But I
I
was
kind
not
of
a
had to
great.
trick myself. So I have social anxiety as well. And um but I ended up trying to trick myself because I would always like bail out of ideas because I was scared. And then when I really decided like I'm going to try and like, you know, run my own company and build my own ideas, I made a deal with myself, which is if the only reason that I am not doing something was because I was scared, then I would just do it. I would do that thing. Like if I could
Mhm.
only think of the only reason, if I could not find other reasons that were real except for the fact that I was scared about what people would think, then or I was scared of failing, then I would just do it. And so if there's no logic besides just fear, then I force myself to do things. That's one of the things. Also, I kept an internal motto that kind of like fueled me moving forward, and that is something that made me believe that I could succeed because I would always say to myself, and then I heard this in different versions, but then this is what I refined for myself, and I don't remember where it started, but someone else said something similar to this originally, but this is what I use, which is you can succeed because whatever you're trying to do, someone else is out there doing it the exact same thing worse, and they're a millionaire.
Yeah, that, that is absolutely the very similar to the motto or the way I talk to myself about it. I go,
Mhm.
somebody has achieved this, right?
Yes.
And then the other one I use, because I grew up in, I know you grew up in Huntsville, Alabama, and I grew up
Hmm.
in near Athens, Georgia.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
so we're from the South. It's
Yeah, where did you how country did you get? Because I was very country in the summers because I went to my grandparents had a pig farm, so I would
okay.
be on a
So
pig farm in the summer.
I was year round
Uh-huh.
about that country.
Oh yeah,
So
yeah. Were you barefoot running through gravel, bloody toes?
absolutely, yes, that's absolutely true. So
Country kids know that.
that's absolutely right. Like I remember, I'm still traumatized by this too. It's like when my grandma she killed our Thanksgiving turkey. She slaughtered it
Oh yeah,
in
yeah,
in the
yeah.
kitchen. Yes, I
Yeah,
remember
my
that.
grandpa would slaughter a pig, and we'd be
Yeah.
like, "Oh
Oh
my
yeah.
gosh."
I know how to dress a deer.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Well, people make
go
fun of
ahead.
us, but if the apocalypse ever comes, we're going to be very useful.
My wife's family goes like in the revolution, we're following Dave. That's the way they approach it. But what I guess like back to the talk about success was like going, I'm already playing with house money, right? I was the first person in my family that went to college.
Oh,
I
there you
was
go.
like, so it's like I'm like, God, I've already been a success, right? Because I'm, not running around on gravel anymore, except for when I go visit my family. But the question I wanted to ask you was like, you built this, you said, if I'm scared, I'm going to do it anyway.
Hmm.
And, somebody else is out there doing it worse than you would do it, and they're a millionaire, right? Which I think are very helpful ways of framing things. One of the challenges people struggle with is like, how big does that first step need to be? Right. And in your case, like, what does that first step look like? Because I know, and I'll be curious about you, is that courage is a muscle, and like taking, and being unafraid. It's not like all of a sudden you or I were magically unafraid. It's like it took like a little bit, like small steps, and you'd build on these successes. And people think they think I'm bullshitting them when I say this, but so I'm curious, like, when you're talking about being brave and you built up this muscle of courage, how did you do it? Like, how small did you start? And how did you continue to grow that muscle?
It actually started with so I was working for the Love and Hip Hop, I was working for Love and Hip Hop as a producer, um, and on one of their shows. And then when I left there, I was like, I want to do my own thing because if people trust me to be a producer on like $1 million franchises, I must be good enough to do something on my own.
Mm-hmm.
And then, um, and then, wait, I'm sorry. I want to make sure I answer your question correctly. I know it's, what was the question again?
No, the
ADHD high.
Either way, it would probably been a great answer, so it's fine. I was asking, like, how did you build up your courage muscle, right?
Oh,
I'm telling people, like small steps.
I started small. Okay. So I started small. I started just doing anything where I had always been like, I want to do this. And I thought I could do it, but then I had bailed. For instance, for many, many years, I had said to myself, I think I could be a New Yorker cartoonist. And so, and I'd never tried. And I had friends who were New Yorker cartoonists. And my friends who were New Yorker cartoonists were like, Victor, you're super funny. You should try being a New Yorker cartoonist. And I was like, I don't know. And I would never do it, but I would also still look at the cartoons and be like, oh, I'm funnier than that. I could beat that. And then I started trying. The very first thing I did was like, I'm going to try and be a New Yorker cartoonist. And then so I tried, and it took a year, but now I'm a New Yorker cartoonist.
Right.
And that is like, and my friend was like, she was really impressed because she told me that I could be a New Yorker cartoonist, but she didn't really think that I could do it but she was trying to encourage me. But then I got it, and then I got several cartoons. I've had like one cartoon that was like really blew up in the New Yorker. It was like really famous, and it was like shared by like Questlove and Viola Davis shared it, and it had like just a whole bunch of reshares. Like it went out to millions of people. Eventually. It was a cartoon about reacting to the death of George Floyd. And so that was like my first like quote unquote hit cartoon. But so that was like the first thing I did because it was like really low stakes. Like I found out like all I had to do is draw cartoons and take them into the biggest I take it into the Saturday Night Live of cartoon places and let them see it and have them look at it and then say either yes or no. And for me, that's super, super scary. Like, what if I work all the time on the cartoons, I take them into the New Yorker, which is like the epitome of like, I mean, whatever you think about the New Yorker, everybody respects the New Yorker cartoonist one way or the other. What if I took it in and I put it down in front of them and they were like, you're an idiot? Like, what if they said, like, how bad would that feel?
Yeah. But what you find out is that they never do that. It's always like everybody's very like usually respectful and like they're overly empathetic in most of these cases. It's like the people who are jerks are so few and far between when you're doing these things.
Well, yeah, but it doesn't even matter whether or not they're respectful. It's whether or not my work is actually good. Yeah. So that's the thing. And then when I took it in the first time, like I didn't sell the first time, but the way the process works is that the cartoon editor takes the cartoons to the real editor. So the cartoon editor will pick some of your cartoons and then take them to the magazine editor, and the magazine will pick from those cartoons. So you have two stages. But if the cartoon editor takes your cartoons to the real editor, the cartoon editor is saying these cartoons are good enough to be in the magazine. Yeah. So even when I initially started, at least some of my cartoons went to the editor. So it was encouraging to start. Yeah. But it's just an interesting system.
Yeah, no, it's and it's you start, like you said, you start small, right? Like low stakes. And usually the reason I say the thing about people being respectful and professional, it's like because in your head, at least in my head, you're like going, oh my God, they're going to like throw me out of the, the top of that skyscraper and it's going to be the end of, and like people are going to throw trash cans at me. And, and it's just like, if you can train yourself like you've done, like I think I've done in a lot of cases, just to be like, let me neutralize that fear for just long enough to do the thing. Once you're in the middle of the moment, you're like, it's totally fine, because then, at least for me, instinct takes over, right? And
well, true, but then I still have that fear of not even them being mean, but them looking at my work and being like, thank you for your work, thank you for your time. This is not for us. Like that would have been devastating.
Oh yeah.
Because my thought was like, I had said to myself, I'm funny enough to be a New Yorker cartoonist for so long, if I went into the New Yorker and did my very best work and then they were just like, no, that would devastate me.
Yeah. Well, knowing that you're a stand-up comic probably would give you would I think lead you me to believe that like going, yes, you started out from a stronger point of view, going, yeah, I can be a comedian, I can write in the New Yorker. And strangely enough, you're not the first New Yorker cartoonist that I've had on the podcast either. So that's so it's pretty, like it's crazy. And I agree with you. I always like still hold the New Yorker in such incredible self-esteem, or not self-esteem, but esteem, not self-esteem. That's mine. And it's so great. So it's so cool, that you'd like, you put this idea out there, you threw it around. Now, let me ask you, because you said you had the social anxiety and you got to, how does that like, how do you take that and then you become a stand-up comic? Because that would seem to be a very challenging profession or even hobby for somebody who is a little bit anxious.
I think that I think that people misunderstand social anxiety and performance, because social anxiety is like, I mean, it's just a fear of interacting with people socially for me, and performing is different, because performing is a very controlled environment. I've written a joke, I'm holding a microphone, I'm in charge. That is very different than being at a party and not knowing anybody.
Right. Yeah.
like if you're like any stage. Sorry, give me a microphone. Give me a microphone. I will walk up on any stage and say something funny, and I know I can do it, and I know I can make the audience laugh. But put me at a party where I know no one. Oh my god, I would die.
And see that this is the thing. You're saying that you're in New York where it's like a little bit easier to like even connect with people. I'm in DC where everybody's going to go, well, like, who do you work for? So it's like a whole different thing. So let me ask you this then. Now, knowing that like, your career and your company has touched so many different areas, right? In our conversation has touched on a whole lot of different things. I want to, kind of condense this down into like a couple takeaways that people who are in the live events industry can take away about, bringing a fresh set of ideas, a fresh set of eyes, a unique perspective. Because to me, the cool thing about getting the chance to talk to you today has been that like you have, you pull together all these unique experiences and these unique ideas together and to create this thing that is unique to you, which I think is amazing, right? Like, you've built Supreme Robot. Supreme Robot is a home for like all of this great stuff you're doing. And I told you that the challenge a lot of people are dealing with is they're sometimes afraid to make that next step. So I want to leave people with like a little bit of like, maybe an action plan or just like a kick in the pants. About like, look, don't be afraid, right? Like we were talking about, don't be afraid, just take that first step.
I'm sorry, I don't understand your question.
So,
again,
that's okay.
Again, your questions are very long, and then I'm just listening to you, and then you end on a sentence, and then I'm like, what was the question?
Oh yes, the monologue, the Dave monologue. So I want to just leave people with a couple of like key points and takeaways about how they can, bring their ideas to the world and overcome that fear, because I think those are, kind of the two things that you have done really well, which is overcome fear by taking action and collecting all these really great ideas and bringing them together in these unique ways that you have brought to the world. So how would you encourage people to overcome that fear and to be unafraid of their own creativity?
I don't know the answer. How to overcome your fear. And so I do. I mean, I explained how I overcome my fear, or at least the deal that I've made with myself, how I move forward. And then I mean, is it you're asking how, because is it people who are afraid of their own creativity and are just not even creative even on their own? Or are you saying people who are trying to be creative and trying to get it out to other people and make a living off of it? Like which one are you asking about?
I think that probably for the audience, I think the first thing is helping people understand, like, you gave people your tool, and I explained a little bit of my process.
Mm-hmm.
The question I want to help people understand is like how they can they can build that little bit of courage muscle for themselves. Like, so how they can take that first step, because that's what a consistent bit of feedback that people give me is that, they want to bring these ideas up in their organizations, in their meetings, but they're sometimes uncertain how. And, it's great to hear from Victor or Dave when they say this, but how can they embody that themselves?
I'm not sure, because I'm sure it's different for every person, because like my version is very different from your version. So it depends on the person. But I will say, here's something that I think that everyone should do if they want to hone their creativity and give themselves deadlines and learn how they fare against other people's creativity and learn like whether or not their work is good and what they need to work on. Okay. Enter a lot of contests. I did that. It helped a lot. Entering contests that gives you a task. Entering contests gives you a task. Sometimes you win a prize, and you get to see your work compared to other people's work.
Yeah. No, that's actually really good. And how did you come up with that? Like, what led you to that path? Because I never thought of that before.
I came up with that because I saw a couple of friends of mine who were trying to make sure they're trying to like teach themselves how to be filmmakers. And then they taught themselves how to be filmmakers by making films and entering contests. And then they ended up winning, like, I would say like not a huge amount, like 10% of the contest, but it ended up being like a substantial amount of money.
10% of the contest. So that actually seems like a lot, because so many of these contests, it's like there's no barrier for entry in so many cases. And so
exactly,
you're competing against just tremendous amount of people.
Well, yeah, but most people can't perform to a professional level.
Well, that's certainly true.
Yeah. So like, yeah, it's open to the world, but like most people, they enter contests and they, put a piece of crap in the contest and then it doesn't go anywhere.
It's very easy to turn that away. Yes.
Yeah. I run a comedy film festival. I know for a fact, because like people send us what they call their comedy films quite a bit.
It's the when you go, so you're talking about going to the parties and not wanting to interact with people. That is the worst, is when you got the person that comes up to you at the party and goes like, I'm a funny guy. And
oh my gosh. When people learn I'm a comedian, they're always like trying to be funny to me and trying to make me laugh. And then I will stone face people.
I think to me, the key is that like going, it's not so much that you're trying to be funny, it's that you're bringing things that are absurd or like noticeable that people just haven't put a name to before. And you can do that. I was like going, because if you're trying to be funny, I have this image of you as this wacky, zany guy.
No, I'm not. I'm never. Well, I am funny. I'm a very funny person. This is really funny. This is stupid, but funny. So speaking of fear, one of the things I started doing my stand-up act is one of the things I was most fearful of, which is walking in front of the audience, and before I perform, I tell the audience I'm really funny.
Because
that has become a regular part of my act now. But that's like one of those things. The reason I'm bringing that up is because being a comedian is you're already, by the fact that you're a comedian and you're getting on stage in front of an audience, you're already saying that you're funny. You are doing that. But it would be very taboo for a comedian to be like, I'm funny. Check this out. Here come my jokes. That's extremely taboo and possibly going to sabotage your entire set. That's also a possibility. So when I put that as a barrier for me, like the first time I did that on stage, I definitely bombed. But now I don't. But now I don't. I did a show last night. I started by saying I was funny before I even performed, and the audience was laughing already, like because it's it was a challenge that I made for myself. But what I'm saying now is like that also got me to the point where I'm like, I think that a certain type of funny is kind of effortless, you know? Like you can always be like, I'm really good at talking to people and finding a moment where I can like just make them laugh. Like it's really simple. And so I'm confident in my ability to be humorous at this point. I forget exactly what your question was in this case, but you were asking something about being funny and people walking up to you being, wait, what was the question?
No, I don't even remember the question this time. So I don't have any idea. This is
Oh my
like
gosh,
this
people
is
who listen
this
to
is
this
the
podcast, I apologize
no
so
they're
much
gonna
because I'm a crazy person.
the two crazy people. Then it's totally fine. No, I think hearing how you like challenge yourself and again in that way, I think it's helpful. I think that like for me, if I was the lesson I want to impart to people is like going. You just throw yourself out there, right? You just tell yourself like going, I don't have to be brave forever. I just have to be brave for this moment. And then and then it'll be okay because nobody I think the big lesson I've learned, which I'll be curious about you, is that most of the time nobody cares about like they're concerned about you making a fool of yourself or you making a mistake is so small, right? The stakes like tricking yourself into being courageous is often about short circuiting your fear long enough to take action to go like, well, nobody really actually even cared about that. And that's like, you know, throwing yourself out there and going to the New Yorker, telling people when you walk on stages that I'm funny. Those are all like really like small things that if you weren't, like if you let the voices in your head get too big, they'll stop you. And I think that like the thing about you that impresses me is the fact that you're like going, I don't care. I've taught myself how to not to like, I'll take those risks. And what's the worst? The way I say it is, what's the worst that'll happen?
Yes, I agree. I agree. In a strange way, part of the thing that helped me is really learning a lot more about philosophy and Stoicism specifically. Even though I don't believe everything in Stoicism, one of the things that the Stoics talk about is like always imagine like the worst case scenario.
Yeah.
And then like keep that in mind because like when you know what the worst case scenario is, you're like, am I okay with that? Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Yeah,
And then
right.
so it gives you the freedom to just do whatever.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the things that I've adopted, which is like, what's the worst case scenario if I say I'm not funny? I could bomb. Like, yeah, but that could happen even if I don't say it. So
right.
if I say
exactly.
I'm funny, so go for it.
Yeah. Or if you're trying to make a sale or you bring an idea to somebody, what's the worst they're going to do? They'll say no. Oh my God, like I can live with that.
Yeah,
Listen,
that's fine.
People told me no a lot over the years. It's totally easy. I can deal with that, and I think that is a really great piece of advice. It's like going, what's the worst that can happen, and can I live with it? And I think that will, at least from my point of view, that'll get you a long way.
Agreed.
So, Victor, where can I point people to find find out more about you on the internet?
Well, if you want to find out everything I do, just go to supremerobot.com. If you want to get ready for the worldwide Tic Tac Toe Championship, go to highscoregamercade.com. Even though the championship doesn't start until February 18th, right now there's still games on the arcade and prizes every day. So you can play for free, win a prize every day if you're good.
I like that.
Unless if you suck, you won't live. Well, actually, you can win a prize because we're giving prizes right now for the first place and the 26th place. So you could win a prize even if you suck.
That's better odds than Wordle.
Yeah, it is. It is. And then first place and 26th place, and then also if you want to use the writing coach, which is the thing that will help you write a book. If you it's called magicbookifier.ai, magicbookifier.ai, bookifier like purifier, If you search for Magic Book of Fire, then it'll come up immediately. And inside it is a tool called the Writing Coach, and it does exactly what I told you about, which is like you can type in and say I want to do a thing, and then it'll ask you questions and interview you.
Yeah, I'll try to actually put the Magic Book of Fire link in the show notes. That way people can, since that one will be maybe most likely to jam people up, but also I think one that will be very fun because having done that.
If you email me, I will give you a code so that all your users can get free credits.
Oh, okay, great. We can do that.
Yeah, just let me know, and I'll make sure.
Gifts.
Just tell like my people, and then I'll make sure it gets to you.
Perfect. Well, Victor, thank you so much for doing this, man.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
This was fun.
Let me know what you thought of my conversation with Victor by sending me an email. It is my name, Dave at davewakeman.com. Make sure you check out my website. It's davewakeman.com. And get the Talking Tickets newsletter at talkingtickets.substack.com. Or there's a drop-down box, a pop-up box, a couple places to sign in on the website. And then you'll get everything Dave. I'm going to put the link to the Talking Tickets Slack channel in the show notes because that's too long for me to tell you about. And I am going to plug the Talking Tickets newsletter one more time because this is like week 2 or 3 of the Live Nation trial in New York City. Every day reveals something new. I have been analyzing the systemic issues in tickets, the case. It's a lot of stuff I've been writing about. I've been getting back into the writing flow. So check that out. And as I always tell you, make sure you rate, review the podcast. If you found something here that was worthwhile, share it with a friend or colleague. It helps me continue to grow the podcast and make sure people can find these episodes. Until next time, I want to thank you so much for being here, and I will talk to you soon. Take it easy.